Hello, I'm Tessa Shepperson, and I want to talk to you about your property investment business. So you are presumably a property investor because you want to make money. Why else would you invest in property? And I should start off by saying that my service relates solely to residential property rented out to tenants. Now, there are two ways that you can make money in that situation. The first of all is the increase in the capital value of your property. And the second way is through the rental income that you earn from your property. Now, I can't help you with the capital value, but my service can help you with your rental income. So the first thing is that you want the maximum amount of money coming in. So that means that you want to have good tenants who pay their rent regularly without voids. So that's one thing that you need to make sure of. You also want to minimize your expenses. Now, a lot of expenses you can't really minimize, so you have to have good insurance. You'll have to get energy performance certificates. You're going to have to do repair work. But there are some expenses that you really don't want, and those are penalties that you can incur for non-compliance with the law. And that's one area in particular where my service is very helpful. As a landlord, you do need to have a good understanding of your rights and obligations, because renting a property is a consumer service. You are providing a home for ordinary people. That's what you're doing as a landlord. And it's a consumer service, and it's therefore very heavily regulated. And there are fines and penalties for non-compliance, and those fines and penalties can be very expensive indeed, not something that you will want. So let's take a look at some specific situations. Now, you may say, well, this isn't a problem for me because my property is handled by my letting agent. And that may be fair enough. Many property investors, their letting agents handle everything. They don't worry about it. They just sit back and watch the money roll into their bank account. And many agents are very good indeed, and you are perfectly safe in entrusting your property to them. However, I have to say that other agents are less good, and even a good agency can become less good. For example, if one of the members of staff leaves and they are replaced by somebody who has perhaps had less training and has less experience in the business. You also need to be aware that if you use a letting agent, you are responsible legally for everything they do. There is a specific law of agency, and that is one of the principles of agency law, that if a letting agent does something wrong, they are not liable for that. You are, which is another reason why you need to be really careful who you use as your letting agent. You may also say, well, this isn't a problem for me because I have let my property out onto a rent-to-rent agreement, and my tenant sublets the property. They pay me a regular rent, and they earn money from subletting the property to tenants. And again, that can work really well. Some landlords have done quite well with that. But again, you do have to be careful, because in some situations, landlords have had real problems. Also, it has to be said that there are some people who you really, if you knew more about them, you really wouldn't want to trust your property to them. A property is a very valuable investment. One of the problems about the rent-to-rent arrangement is that as a property owner renting to someone who's going to sublet, you do have very few protections in law. All of the sort of consumer protections that will help you if you have a problem with a bad letting agent won't be there to help you if you have a problem with a bad rent-to-rent landlord/tenant. It also has to be said that many people don't really understand the rules that apply in this situation. Many people use completely inappropriate agreements, and this can cause enormous problems down the line. And it is not unknown for property owners to suffer big losses, and some have even had difficulty recovering their property back. And I understand that the problems caused by the pandemic have have sometimes made these situations a lot worse. Now, if you're not the property owner yourself, you are the middle person, the rent-to-rent landlord / tenant, then you will normally be subletting the property out as a house in multiple occupation. And your income will be the difference between the rent you get from your HMO tenants and the rent that you have to pay the property owner, your rent, as it were. So in order to make an income from this, you have to manage your HMO tenants properly. And one thing you need to know is that houses in multiple occupation is very heavily regulated. And you, in most cases, will need to obtain a license from the council. And obtaining a license from the council often involves carrying out improvement work to the property. And again, that brings up a problem. Who is responsible for that? Who is responsible for getting the license? Who is responsible for doing the improvement work? Is that expense your expense? Is it the property owner? Is this covered by the agreement? So there are all sorts of situations that can apply. And again, if you are an HMO landlord, the fines for non-compliance with the rules can be very heavy indeed, and is not something that you really want to risk. So what about enforcement of regulations? Well, there are three main ways that regulations are enforced. The main enforcement organisation is local authorities, not the police. Police have very little involvement in housing law, and they don't really know much about it. It's the local authorities who enforce the regulations, normally by bringing proceedings at magistrates' courts where you're fined, or by serving penalty charge notices on you, which can be up to £30,000 per issue. In many situations, for example, if you're in breach of the HMO management regulations, there may be a large number of separate issues, and you can have a penalty charge notice or a fine of up to 30,000 for each one. And it's worth also mentioning here that magistrates' court fines are now unlimited. So you could be facing a very heavy penalty if you are not compliant with the rules. Now, many local authorities, for various reasons, perhaps because of lack of income, because of austerity, or lack of suitably qualified staff, don't do as much enforcement work as perhaps they should. However, don't relax, because much of the enforcement work can now be done by your tenants. And for example, if you haven't obtained an HMO license, your tenants can bring an application for a rent repayment order, which can be for up to 12 months worth of rent. And they can also apply to the court for penalties if you breach the tenancy deposit rules. So tenants can bring claims against you direct. And that's leaving aside their rights for bringing claims against you if the property is not in a proper condition. So the third way that regulations are enforced is by an inability to enforce your rights. So, for example, you can't serve a valid Section 21 notice if you haven't complied with the many prerequisites. For example, you have to have complied with the deposit rules, you have to have complied with the gas safety rules, the electrical rules, and so on. Now, if you are renting a property in Wales, that's also the case for the similar provisions under the new Welsh legislation. So if you are an investor, it is a wise investor who understands their investments and the subject matter of their investments. So, for example, if you are investing in technology companies, it's really a good idea to have some understanding of the technology involved, and then you can assess whether the company you're investing in is a good bet. Likewise, if you are investing in residential property, you really need to understand the rules that apply, so that you can ensure that you don't have a drain on your income from the penalties that I've discussed, and that your property is being dealt with in a way that will maximise your income. So what about me? I'm Tessa Shepperson. That picture's from a time when my hair was less grey. I am, for my sins, a solicitor, and I specialise in residential landlord and tenant law. I run an online service called Landlord Law, which I've run for the past 20 plus years, and I also write a blog called the Landlord Law blog. I'm an author and speaker, and I am also a Property Investment Bureau accredited trainer. Here is a bit about my services. I run a membership site called Landlord Law. It's an online service. There are information, guidance, forms, documents, plus you can ask me questions in the members forum, which is very useful, because often if you are managing your property yourself, or even if you've got an agent and you've got a problem, you're not sure whether your agent's dealing with something properly, you may not want to put a suit on and go and see a solicitor. But if you're a member of Landlord Law, you can just pop a question on the forum and I'll go in and answer it, normally within 24 hours, although it may be a bit longer if it's a bank holiday or a weekend. So that's very helpful. I know a lot of members feel that being a member of Landlord Law, it's like having a comfort blanket. They know that I'm there and I can support them and advise them when necessary. Outside of the Landlord Law membership site, we also do one-day workshops. These can either be with me, or we often use specialist housing barristers or solicitors. And you can attend this either in person or remotely via live stream. And the live stream option has proved very popular. It's something new that we introduced after the pandemic. As well as this, I also have online training courses that I've written, which provide instruction on specific issues. For example, we've got a tenancy agreements one, we've got one on HMOs, and also there is a rent-to-rent training course. I also have legal kits, which have step-by-step guidance on specific tasks. And I have to say, by far and away, the most popular kit that we've ever written is the property inspections kit, which gives you step-by-step guidance on preparing for and carrying out a property inspection on your property, which I should add is something that landlords don't do nearly often enough. It's really, really important. And it's also increasingly a condition of landlord insurance. You may want to check that. So if you want to find out more about the services, you can go to the Landlord Law shop, which is at landlordlaw.co.uk, LLL shop. And finally, I have a weekly bulletin, which you're very welcome to sign up to. It's completely free. It goes out every Tuesday morning. It has legal news, updates, information, sometimes special offers. There's usually a video of the week, and I usually give free access to a part of the Landlord Law site, so you can go and have a look at some of the Landlord Law membership content. And also when you sign up, you get a free ebook on 25 critical issues for landlords. So you can sign up at landlordlaw.co.uk/bulletin. So that's all from this little introductory video about me. Thank you very much for watching.